Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and asks, what are the job titles of the 3 Burmese government officials sponsored via the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to study New Zealand, and what checks were made by the Ministry to ensure that the officials had not held, quote, controversial roles, end quote, in the Burmese regime?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Mr. Speaker, all 3 Burmese officials taking part in the English language training for officials, the ALTO program, are from the most junior of the 6 ranks of officials in the Burmese public service. One is an attaché from the Planning and Administrative Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. One is a staff officer from the General Administration Department of the Office of the Government. And the third is a staff officer of the Office Administration of the Ministry of Home Affairs. The ALTO program for ASEAN nations has provided English language training for over 750 officials in the 18 years it has been in operation. 35 of those officials have been from Burma. All Burmese nationals applying for entry are assessed by the Immigration Profiling Group. Applicants considered to pose any risk to New Zealand are not granted a visa.
Keith Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What are we doing training Burmese Foreign Ministry officials whose job is to present the regime in the best possible light using, after their training here, very good English?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Mr. Speaker, can I say first of all that it's generally felt that exposure to the principles of human rights, the rule of law and democracy in New Zealand is generally regarded as a beneficial education for officials in addition to the English language that they acquire in this country. But can I also say, Mr. Speaker, that there have been 35 Burmese officials trained under the ALTO scheme. There has never been a decision to suspend the scheme at any stage. The whole scheme, the whole ALTO scheme was suspended pending a review in 2008, and there were no applicants from Burma in the first intake after it was reinstituted. In 2010, there were applicants from Burma. The Ministry sought my concurrence to allow those applicants to be selected according to the long-established criteria.
Keith Locke.
Supplementary. Using the same principles the Minister's just outlined, do we offer training through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to any officials from the Fiji regime in order to assist Fiji return to democracy?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Mr. Speaker, as I indicated in my primary answer, the ALTO scheme is a scheme designed for the ASEAN nations, and when I last inspected a map, Fiji was not located in Southeast Asia.
Keith Locke.
Supplementary. Will he give an assurance that government officials from Burma, while in New Zealand, will not monitor the efforts here of anti-regime refugees?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Mr. Speaker, can I give the member an assurance that junior officials are selected for these programs and those who undertake the selection process give full consideration to the sort of issues that the member has just outlined. This is an ASEAN-wide program which is intended to play a constructive influence in addition to introducing English language, also exposing those officials to good standards of governance, to principles of democracy, human rights and the rule of law. These are regarded widely as beneficial matters. And can I say to the member that we have talked widely to our partners around the world about engagement with Burma. He'll be aware that the United States, under the Obama administration last year, made a decision to re-engage with Burma at a lower level. I've taken the opportunity personally to talk to Assistant Secretary of State Kurt Campbell, and also to the Chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Jim Webb, who have been to Burma to look precisely at how we can best contribute to this process through schemes of the sort that we operate.
Keith Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he accept that even the most junior officials will only be allowed to come here if they're totally supportive and loyal to the regime? And does he accept that it is possible that these officials will report back to the regime on the activities of Burmese anti-government activists who live in New Zealand?
The Honourable Mary McCully.
Speaker, I hope that the officials who come to New Zealand on the scheme will report back to Burma on the excellent standards of governance, adherence to the rule of law and respect for human rights that they have found in New Zealand. That is the sort of report that I hope that they will convey with them. But can I just emphasise to the member that we do take seriously the concerns he raises. He does not need to convince me, or I'm sure many other members of the House, that the standards of governance in Burma have been appalling, and anyone who saw the repression, the bloody repression of Burmese monks on television, on our screens, would have some most firm and not very supportive things to say about that regime. However, we are part of an international community that has decided that this year we are trying to assist Burma to find a constructive way forward. The ALTO scheme, I think, will make a minor contribution to that process, and we are mindful of the risks that he outlines in following that course.
Keith Locke.
Doesn't he agree, though, that right now, when the government is not freeing Aung San Suu Kyi, is shutting the National League for Democracy out of the elections and clamping down on the Burmese people, that this is not the time to give points by taking these people to a regime that he a couple of years ago described as the butchers of Burma?
The Honourable Mary McCully.
Speaker, I'm not going to resolve for any of the harsh things I've said about that regime in the past. I believe that they attract the very strongest criticism for the steps that have been taken there to repress particularly the Burmese monks. What I will say, though, is that there's been, since the middle of last year, a general international consensus that there should be some lower level of engagement with Burma in an attempt to try and encourage those elements in their society who do support moves towards democracy and respect for human rights to make some progress. I agree with the member that the features in relation to the election this year that he describes are highly regrettable, and New Zealand's view on that, as I'm sure the views of other communities around the world, are being expressed very firmly to the Burmese government.
Keith Locke.
Talking of international work and cooperation, will New Zealand be joining with Australia and the United Kingdom, who are supporting the UN Special Rapporteur's call for a UN Commission to address human rights in Burma? And if not, why not?
The Honourable Mary McCully.
Speaker, we haven't made any statement on that as yet. What I will say, though, is that generally we do try and work with our friends and like-minded countries around the world in the pursuit of principles of good governance, democracy and respect for human rights.
Keith Locke, point of order.
I seek leave to table a public document of the Refugee Status Appeals Authority dated 20 April, dated in 2001, a decision of 29 June 2001, on the way in which Burmese refugees and their families are persecuted by the Burmese regime.
Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is none. Question number 7, the Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.